The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now logged into WarUp on the WPIAL, featuring your hosts, Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock, Jeff Upson with you here as we're going to recap the 4 tournaments from the past weekend that had a lot of WPIAL schools involved, and then also get you ready for this weekend's tournaments. Plus, section wrestling gets started underway on Wednesday. We also have Darren Miller of Kiski joining us on the show, so that's what's all to come. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm tired. Yeah,
Tired?
long weekend.
Yeah, you're at Ironman, right?
I was at Ironman on Friday, Saturday, yeah, and then Sunday, yesterday, we had a Westmoreland County sports show, had a Kickoff wrestling kickoff show. So it was a bunch of Westmoreland County coaches and some wrestlers. We all did a little bit of an interview. So,
any takeaways from that past weekend action? As far as we're going to talk about Ironman, but at least on Sunday.
Yeah, it was just good to talk with a lot of those coaches. I got to talk to Chris Heater and Josh Shields, all the the coaches there. Matt Leby, obviously, our good buddy, and it was just it was a fun experience. It was the first time they did it, but it was really unique, and I was very fortunate to be asked to come.
Yeah, guest of honor, right?
I don't know about that. That's pushing it a little bit.
I mean, you have been man of the year before. Add in guest of honor. I mean, we got to add the accolades, right?
You can stop whenever you want. It's only episode number 2, Greg. You're already starting to bust my chops.
Well, somebody has to, right?
Eric does too. So.
Well, I mean, we worked on a lot of material. You gave us a lot of time.
I did.
Because Jeff getting married in the off season, Eric and I got to play golf together. We got to go to the wedding. We had a lot of time together. Then we had the surge. So you gave us too much time together to kind of put our collective forces together on you.
Well, I guess I'm in for it then.
Yeah, you did it to yourself, pretty much. Well, let's go ahead and break down the tournaments. Let's start with the Chartiers-Houston Invitational. And at 106 pounds, your champion was Matt Serwaka of North Hills. He had a big win in the semifinals over Noah Broyles of South Fayette. 1-0 in the ultimate tiebreaker. Broyles comes back for third, but a good performance out of the freshman from North Hills.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not one of the deeper weight classes here, but still a really good performance from the freshman from North Hills. So definitely a good boost to the start of his season.
113 pounds featured a pair of strong wrestlers, Joey Fisher of South Park and Ryan Michaels of Elizabeth Forward. Fisher comes away with the title, though, a 5-3 win.
I was really excited to see how this match would play out because, as I said, Michaels, I thought, had been wrestling very, very strong this offseason, going into the season. And he comes out and gets 2 pins, including one over Aaron Robb from Armstrong in the semifinals, but then falls short of Joey Fisher. But he's right there kind of with him.
Yeah, Joey Fisher, actually a nationally ranked guy as well.
Sure.
So definitely no slouch by any means, but it was definitely one of those big-time matchups that you always look forward to. 120 pounds, your champion was Dylan Bruce of Elizabeth Forward, the freshman coming in, and he was unseeded, and he comes away with the title, and he beats Keelan Laffey of Pine Richland, another freshman, in the final.
2 of freshmen that I had on the top incoming freshman list, so I got to toot my own horn there, Greg. Dylan Bruce was definitely one that I was high on coming into the season because of his results during his youth careers. But Kellen Laffey, for him to come out and have a good showing like this, it was he pinned Bryce Wilkes, a stud. I mean, he's a tough kid. He's a junior. So you have 2 freshmen in the finals, and then Dylan Bruce comes out of an exciting 9-7 match in the finals. I was really excited to see these 2 freshmen do really well, and it just further helps the top incoming freshman report, right? Because you have these 2 guys that are really doing well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You talk about Bryce Wilkes. He pinned every other guy he faced in the first period. So he didn't even make it a minute. In any of his other matches, 4 wins for Wilkes, all by fall in less than a minute, but he gets pinned by Laffey in the semi.
First one to 11 seconds, 38 seconds in the next one, and the wrestlebacks 23 seconds and 35 seconds.
Over the top seed, too.
Over the top seed. So, I mean, it's just incredible how strong Bryce Wilkes is. And I don't know, I wasn't able to see the match, but I'm curious to see how that fall happened between him and Laffey. Hopefully we get some recaps on that because guy who just pinned everybody in under a minute and takes third.
And dominated his way there. 126 pounds, Jimmy Guire, best center. He was your champion. He beats Jeremy McPherson of North Hills in the final 6-2.
And Jimmy Guire is a guy who's been around for a while, right? Yep. He's someone we've been talking about for the last 4 years, so I'm not surprised to see him win.
132 pounds, your champion, another freshman from Chartiers Valley, Chris Beatty. He ends up winning 5-2 over Peyton Tyrell of Armstrong. As Tyrell, a sophomore, knocked off Dan Kyle of Upper St. Clair in the semis.
And this was an interesting weight. Again, not a lot of depth here, kind of like 106, but Chris Beatty was one that we also had on the top incoming freshman report, so very curious to see how he would do. So, and I like the Chartiers-Houston Invitational because you get to see these young guys compete, not necessarily with studs in every weight, but you get to see how they can scrap with some of these younger and older mix of wrestlers here. And Beatty, he came out with 3 falls into the finals. So I mean, he pinned his way into the finals and then gets a nice 5-2 decision. So good showing by him, including
over number 2 seed William Kale, who ends up coming back for third. 138 pounds, a little bit deeper. Sam Hilligus of North Hills is your champion. Tech falls, Jacob Ely of Hopewell, 18-1. A note here, Hilligus, other than 2 falls, he beats Nathan Lucas of Pine Richland in the semis, only 7-2. Say only because of the fact that he techs Jacob Ely in the finals. Ely, meanwhile, beats Kenny Dushek 8-1 in the semifinals. So Ely still at the top of his game, but Hilligus maybe a little upset by the Lucas showing and ends up just taking it to Ely.
Yeah, I was very curious to know what happened at Lucas match because Sammy Hilligus does not just decision somebody like that. And Lucas is a strong wrestler. He's a tough wrestler. Yeah. But for him then to come out and tech fall Jacob Ely 18-1 in 4 minutes, wow. Jacob Ely is a stud. He was a state medalist. He's going to Pitt Johnstown. We saw him at the Surge. He won the championship hammer there. Really like the way he's wrestling, but Sammy Hilligus just makes short work of him. If you would have asked me which one would be 7-2, which one would be 18-1, I would have reversed those. Right. So
especially the way Ely's been wrestling.
Exactly.
And he just came off an 8-1 win over Dushek in the semis. Sure. And Lucas ends up beating Dushek for third, 3-1. So definitely a strong 4 at 138 pounds. 145 pounds, your champion was from Brashear, Joe Mawidi. He ends up winning 3-1 in the final over West Davenport of Conneaut area. He did beat Shane Kemper of Burgestown in the semis.
Yeah, and Joe had a great tournament, and it's nice to see Brashear. He's not going to get a ton of competition outside of the Chartiers-Houston, so this is something that really can set that bar for him, and it really puts him on the state rankings, really, I think, beating Shane Kemper. He's a guy we saw at the Surge. I think he was a match away from placing at the Surge. And there was a guy, Stephen Green was in this weight class as well as Shane Kemper, as we said. So for him to come out and win this, that was a good start for his season.
152 pounds, your champion was Donovan McMillan of Peters Township. He beats Grant Walnoa of Upper St. Clair 5-1 in the finals. Walnoa knocks off state qualifier Zach Macy of Chartiers Valley by fall in the semifinals to get to the championship match. And Eli Brinsky, another guy who had a strong tournament at the Surge, he ends up finishing in third place. He beat Jake Pale in the ultimate tiebreaker. He did not get to wrestle Zach Macy. Zach Macy injury defaults after getting pinned.
Yeah, so a few things. I was surprised Zach Macy was up at 152, but he's coming off an injury, so probably having to shed some of those pounds off when he was not able to work out over the off season. Donovan McMillan, though, a guy who had a strong season last year as a freshman, really came out and impressed me. Eli Brinsky, a guy who we had talked about, he was a Surge champion. He beat some quality competition there, but he comes out and he has a tough match to Brandon Laird from Conneaut, and he's really, I think that third place match with Jacob Hale, 3-2 ultimate tiebreaker there. I was kind of surprised to see it that close, but Donovan McMillan, I mean, this is talking about a sophomore. A guy who can really make an impact this year. I think he's one of them if he settles into this weight and wrestles well.
Yeah, 160 pounds. Your champion was Hunter Milligan of Albert Gallatin. He defeats Colton Gizzero, Peters Township, 5-2 in the final. Gizzero coming back. He had some injuries last year that affected his season, but Milligan ends up coming away with the title.
Yeah, Milligan had a tough win in the semifinals, too, over Jack Cottespot from Butler, beat him 13-8 before winning the championship over Jezreel. Another guy I feel like we've been talking about for the last 4 years as well.
No doubt about that. 170 pounds, your champion, Jeff Markert, Peters Township. He wins 7-0 over Peyton Hearn of Conneaut area. Big win for Markert was in the semis. He beats Cole Spencer of Pine Richland 3-2. Spencer comes back for third.
So I don't know if there was a no W handed out here, but I'd have to imagine Jeff was in that running. Because he beat 2 state medalists en route to. Now Sammy Hilgis obviously defeating Jacob Ely like he did is very notable. However, for a guy like Jeff who has not made it to the state tournament. We saw him at the Surge, look really, really sharp. He dropped down to 170. But for him to come out and beat 2 state medalists, Cole Spencer being one of them, Peyton Hearn is a guy who's highly touted as well. Really soundly, right? So I was very excited, and I think he's the real deal. I think we got to watch out for him this year. He's going to be fun to watch. I think he's just kind of like a giant killer. I would not be surprised to see him come out and place on the podium in Hershey.
So we have him surging up the rankings after his tournament, his performance at our tournament. But does this get him even further after this past weekend?
For sure. I mean, you don't beat 2 state medalists and get overlooked, especially him down in a new weight class. And he's jacked. I mean, I don't know if you've seen him, but he's huge. So I was surprised he could make 170, but man, that's not good for other folks there.
No doubt about it. 182 pounds, your champion was from Peters Township, Brandon Matthews. He won 5-4 in the final over Logan Harmon of Armstrong.
Logan Harmon's a guy who I think we need to keep an eye on this season as a sophomore from Armstrong. He's the guy who last year didn't have a team to wrestle on. He was at Apollo Ridge and not having a wrestling team and sort of bounced around trying to figure out where he was going to wrestle, but Armstrong is his home now. Brandon Matthews, though, kind of surprised to see him up at 182, but I think we could see him down to 160, kind of pass by Markert and get down to 160, but still a really good showing for him, beating Harmon 5-4.
195, Dominic Fundy, a best center back from injury. He defeats Harvey Roch of Upper St. Clair 11-8 in the final. Roch knocks off Bryson Miller in the semis 3-1.
Yeah, Roch had a nice win over Miller, and Fundy, first time back on the mat since, man, I don't know when. It's been a while, right? So for him to come out and get a nice win here, although 11-8, he's obviously was in that match. Good to see Dom back on the mat.
220 pounds, your champion was from Armstrong, Ogden Atwood. He defeats John Vargo of Bentworth 5-1 in the final.
Yeah, and Augie he's another guy I think is going to do really well this year, and I think he's going to make it onto the podium this year. But John Vargo's he's no slouch either. I was disappointed to see Connor Forrest from Hopewell not wrestle in this. He injury defaulted out of this tournament, so I'm hoping everything's okay with him.
285 pounds, your champion was Jake Slinger of Upper St. Clair, and he dominates as he gets 4 falls, all in the first period, to win it all. And he defeated Quentin Franklin of South Fayette in the finals 6-2, in the finals by fall. Franklin beat Riley Kemper of Burgestown in the semis 6-2.
And Slinger, this is the first time we've seen him up at heavyweight, and he's moving up from 220, and boy, he looked dominant. So I don't know how much bigger he is. I would assume he's probably weighing around like 240, 245 maybe. Right. So very curious to see how he can hang with some of these bigger heavyweights.
Your team scores, Armstrong was your champion, but not by much, 165. Peters Township, number 2, 161.5. Conneaut was number 3 with 157. Strong showing for Armstrong and Peters Township. Let's slide over now to the Eastern Area Invitational Tournament. And we'll start at 106 pounds, where your champion was Carter Dybert of Franklin Regional, and he was able to do it with a fall in the final over Chad Ozeas of Connellsville. Yeah,
I think Dybert's obviously he's already down at 106. He's feeling good. We saw him at the Surge. He was runner up to Dylan Chappell. Chad Ozeas was the guy who was there as well, but Dybert's he's one of the top wrestlers in the state. So very curious to see how he does this weekend at King of the Mountain.
113, his teammate Finn Solomon was your champion. He beats Evan Whiteside of Gateway in the finals by fall. Solomon also had a big win in the semis. He not only beats Mason Prinkney at Connellsville, he pins Mason Prinkney.
Yeah, and Finn Solomon's a guy, obviously we know about Gus. We know what he was able to do for Franklin Regional. And Matt Lieb was one of the guys I got to talk to yesterday, and he was really impressed with Finn. He said, he wrestled so tough on top. He was just punishing people. He was beating people up. And this is a freshman. So I just hope he's healthy, right? I hope he's healthy, unlike Gus was. And but I think the future is bright for him, especially for him to come out and do what he did.
120 pounds, Franklin Regional goes 3 for 3 as Garrett Thompson was your winner over Dom Giordano of Kiski Area, 5-4 in the final.
Yeah, Garrett Thompson, another guy who we saw at the Surge who did well there. And I think he's a guy who's maybe a little bit more under the radar than others. But if he gets everything together, he keeps this thing rolling, he's going to do well.
126 pounds, your champion was Matt Sarbo from Altoona. He defeats Mario Sarnik of Franklin Regional 12-4 in the final. Jordan Waters of West Allegheny ends up injury defaulting out from the semifinals. Chandler O of DuBois, he ends up placing in third.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Jordan Waters, a guy who made it to the state tournament last year, he got banged up in the face and actually he used all his blood time up. They wrapped his face up and it still was coming out of his mouth, and it was just a mess. So unfortunately he was winning that match, but had to use up all his time. So hopefully he gets everything taken care of, but good showing by Matt Sarbo.
132 pounds, your champion was Darren Miller of Kiski. He defeats Colton Camacho of Franklin Regional, a state runner-up last year, 4-3 in the final. In addition to that, Darren Miller also beats the highly touted freshman Jared Kessler of Connellsville by fall in the semifinals. Kessler comes back for third.
Yeah, so 32 was a weight that I had circled before this started because of the depth here, right? With two upperclassmen and then, of course, the freshmen. Very excited to see how this panned out. And, of course, it was not like what we expected, right? Darren Miller, a guy who I think gets overlooked because he didn't make it to states last year, right? He was third in the state at 106 pounds. He gets a little bit bigger. He does a lot of off-season wrestling. He's wrestling at every tournament there is. He catches up to Colton Camacho. He's able to get a win on him. Two highly touted wrestlers. Camacho going to Pitt. Miller's going to Bucknell. But Kessler as well. I mean, he beat a very tough Trenton Donahue, too. He dominated him. So, it's the future's bright for the WPIAL here with guys like him and Gianni Martini from Trinity, who finished 5th. I'm really excited to see this. I think we could see this match again, this between Miller and Camacho.
Yeah, unless one of them changes weights, we'll see these guys a few more times wrestling each other. And we'll talk to Darren Miller about his big wins coming up here in just a little bit. 138 pounds, your champion was Ed Scott of DuBois. He defeats Mason Spears of Franklin Regional in the finals 5-3.
Yeah, and did you look at this and see Sammy Starr up at 138 pounds? Oh, my gosh, he must have had a big growth spurt over. I thought maybe it was another Starr brother in here. I just read the name wrong, but he takes 4th. Ed Scott, Mason Spears, tough match. Ed Scott's obviously an accomplished wrestler, but Mason Spears, he continues to get better, and he's really closing that gap on these tough guys.
145 pounds, Nick Coy of Penn Trafford, your champion. He runs 3-1 over Tyler Williams of Solderton. The other story, Dylan Ross of Connellsville, he pushes Nick Coy in the semis. He loses 8-7, but then Jackson Gray of Mount Lebanon comes back and beats him for third.
Yeah, so the two guys that impressed me here, Nick Coy and Jackson Gray, because Nick Coy comes out and he beats Tyler Williams, who is a returning state medalist, much like himself. Tyler Williams is a really solid wrestler who came all the way out from Souderton, and Nick Coy takes care of business, but Jackson Gray pushing the pace with Coy, and then coming out and beating a really tough Dylan Ross 5-0. So I think Gray's we're starting to see him, take it to that next level.
152 pounds, your champion Cam Connor of Kiski. He beats Connor Trowbridge of Solderton 10-1 in the final.
And Cam Connor's a special kid, and to see him wrestle this season, I think we're in for a treat. I think he's going to have a great season, and just showing here at the Eastern area, he's out there to do some damage to people.
160 pounds, your champion was Ty McGeary of West Allegheny. He beats Jack Bloomer of Kiski 5-3 in the final. These two familiar with one another from last year and going at it again this year.
Yeah, and McGeary's, of course, Bloomer won a Southwest Regional Championship. McGeary just kind of barely made it to states, and then all of a sudden, he ends up on the podium at states. Bloomer does not. In fact, he loses to him at the state tournament. So, very curious to see how this rematch would shake out. 5-3 McGeary, he does win it. So Bloomer, if he wants to get over that hump, he's got to figure out a way to get a takedown.
And another Stout making their name out there. Max Stout placing third here from Mount Lebanon.
Yeah, he had a great showing, for third at 160 pounds for a freshman. I think, he's behind two state-ranked wrestlers, so he's right there with them.
170 pounds, your champion Nick Delp of Kiski beats Noah Hutcherson of Valley in the final by fall.
Yeah, and Delp's kind of like Connor there. He just kind of rolled through this tournament, not really pushed at a lot of weights, but very excited to see how he shapes out this season.
182 pounds, Luke Stout of Mount Lebanon. He won by fall in the finals over John Bakar of Penn Trafford to win it all.
And Stout he's one of the highest commodities, I think, out there in the state. After what he did in Fargo this offseason, to see him now competing at such a high level, 182 is stacked in the state. I mean, Starocki, Ninehouse, you got Edmund Ruth, now Stout, Scott Joel. I mean, it's ridiculous how deep this weight is, but Luke Stout's right in there.
195 pounds, your champion from Trinity, Cole Whitmer. He ends up winning 8-3 in the final over Braden Roskoski of Kiski Area, a new name for the Cavaliers.
Say that again. Roskoski. That's a tough. Yeah, I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so I'm gonna have to come up with a nickname for him. But Cole Whitmer, how about him from Trinity?
Yep.
the Trinity Hillers.
He had a couple big wins last
year. Yeah, he did, and he's up a few weights.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's up at least two weights here, up at 195. But and Braden's a guy who is a sophomore. He was a PJW state champion, and actually Chris Heater I was talking to yesterday and said he hadn't lost a match since like 7th grade. Right.
Wow.
So, but I told him, I was like, well, it's better to take these losses now than it is later in the line. So you're not planning on going to your career undefeated. So take it now. But Cole Whitmer, good job by him.
220 pounds, your champion Nate Simmers from Altoona. He beats Troy Kuhn of Kiski 4-3 in the final.
Yeah, and this is kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. Nate Simmers is a guy who is coming down from heavyweight. He was there last year. He's coming down to 220. Troy Kuhn's one kind of moving up. He's probably not a true 220-pounder, but still a good showing.
285, Dave Schufert of Valley beats Nathan Hoagland of Mount Lebanon 3-2 in the final.
And this was going to be a tight battle here. Hoagland's a guy I've been high on, but Schufert really came out and did what he had to do to show why he's one of the top guys in the state.
Another tournament to look at was the Cumberland Valley tournament where Cannon McMillan wrestled. And how did some of the Big Macs do, Jeffrey?
Yeah, they did pretty well. I love seeing Cannon Mac come out to the Cumberland Valley Classic because you have teams like Council Rock South there, Boiling Springs, Hempfield area actually made it out there as well. But you get to see a nice mix of different sections and regions and districts coming all together. So it was very exciting to see how everyone did. Jacob Haupt at 106 pounds, a freshman for Cannon Mac, takes third, going 4-1 on his day. But Briar Priest as well, a freshman who we had on the top incoming freshman list, he finishes in fourth, losing to Haupt 3-0. So a good showing by them there.
113 pounds, Ethan Bergning of Hempfield area. He finishes in fourth place. Costa Moore of Cannon McMillan, meanwhile, finishes in fifth.
Yeah, two sophomores, and Costa Moore is a guy who we didn't get to see last year in the lineup for the Big Macs, but he's there now, and I think he's kind of going to be a key component to their lineup this year.
120 pounds, Kyle Burkholder of Hempfield finishing in fifth place. So I would say a little bit of a surprise here from Kyle.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. So, I mean, you look at the weight here. This was a very deep weight class. You had Andrew Smith, state medalist, Ben Moon from Cumberland Valley, who's a state medalist, Max Mendez from Council Rock South, two-time state qualifier, Nate Smith, two-time state medalist. So, I mean, it was a really deep weight class. But Kyle Burkholder comes in as a third-place finisher at the state tournament. So you got to think, I mean, he's pretty high up there. But 120 was probably the deepest weight class of the tournament.
He also wrestles up a weight, too, as he was at 113 at our Surge tournament.
Yeah, he was. So, I mean, I'm assuming he's going to come down to 113 when they get to 2 pounds. But still, I think a lot of these guys are. I think most of these guys at this weight are probably going to come down, so he's going to have to beat them eventually.
126 pounds, Cannon McMillan's Jacob Gardner finishes in fifth place. 132 pounds, Cannon McMillan's Kenny Heyman finishes in second place.
Yeah, and man, he was very close to beating Chase Shields from Bishop McDevitt, a guy who's a state runner-up and one of the highest recruited guys in the state. But Heyman, man, he really impressed me here. He's another guy we saw at the Surge coming out on second here, but really keeping it close with Chase Shields.
138 pounds from the WPIAL. There was not a medalist in the top 6. 145, Ty Linsenbigler, though. He finishes in third place, and Tanner Rohaley finishes in 6th from Camacho.
Yeah, so 145 was another really deep weight class. You had Colin Myers, a state runner-up, Deshaun Farber, a two-time state champion from Georgia, who's now at Nazareth. Linsenbigler, obviously, as a guy who we've talked about before on the show, but he had a really good win over Tyler Martin from Bishop McDevitt, a junior. He pinned him, so good showing by him.
152 pounds, the WPIAL does not have a top 6 place winner there, as well as 160. But 170, the WPIAL does have Tyler Rohaley, who finishes in 5th place from Camacho.
How many Rohaleys are there? I remember talking to Jeff Avelka last year, and I said something about Rohaley. He said, no, they're not brothers or cousins or something. So I don't know where they keep on coming from, but he's a sophomore, and he finishes in 5th. So kind of a new name for the Big Macs.
I think Jeff will take as many Rohaleys as he possibly can because they are all strong wrestlers. 182 pounds, Garrett Ninehouse. He finishes in 1st place. He wins the championship by a 15-5 major decision win.
Yeah, and the guy he beat is Max Hale from Downtown West, who's a state medalist. So Ninehouse is just out there destroying people, and there's a reason why he's ranked so high, not only in the state but the nation as well.
195, Hempfield's Justin Kramer finishes in 3rd place. Canammac's Evan Miller in 5th.
Evan Miller had a really good tournament. He defeated Gianni Gilch of Council Rock South, who's a state qualifier. Evan Miller is a guy who doesn't have a ton of varsity experience. Justin Kramer, though, 3rd place for Hempfield. He's a guy who I'm excited to see develop, and I think he's finally kind of get into his stride now as a junior.
220 pounds, Dylan Ferretti of Hempfield finishes in 2nd place.
Yeah, Ferretti's a guy who I'm very high on, but I thought Adam Young was a guy he would have beaten. But Adam Young impressed me here, so Freddie's got to bounce back from that one.
And at 285 pounds, your champion was Isaiah Vance of Hempfield. He wins it all. Giomar Ramos of Canammach, meanwhile, finishes in 3rd.
Yeah, Ramos had a good showing getting 3rd, but Vance, man, he's a big boy, and man, he can wrestle. So I think he's gonna be one of the top guys in the state.
The other big tournament, the Ironman tournament from this past weekend. Jeff, you were there, so you got a chance to see. 106 did not see Dylan Chappell at Seneca Valley.
No, unfortunately it did not. He had a tough go there, and it's Ironman. It's Ironman. We've seen Gary Steen and Cole Matthews both went 2-2 there last year. They both ended up winning state championships, so it's nothing. I don't think it should discourage Dylan, but he has some things he can learn from for sure. And I think it's a good thing for him to take those losses now and figure out what he needs to work on. And he looks bigger than he did at the Surge, actually. Yeah. He looks even bigger than he did just a few months ago. So, he had a few tough matches, but I think he'll bounce back.
113 pounds, Alejandro Herrera Rondon finishes in 2nd place.
Yeah, AHR, man, he's the real deal. And I had to laugh because a lot of these, Ironman's a very nationally renowned tournament, so you have a lot of national media there. And, people are saying, Alejandro, yeah, he doesn't score a lot of points. He shouldn't, how we put him in the national rankings. He gets overlooked in a lot of national rankings. And all of a sudden, he's in the finals of Ironman. People are like, oh, my gosh, we're going to have to rank him. And then where do I put him? I said, guys, he should have been in there to begin with.
Right.
He won a weight class last year where he won essentially 0-0 against Curtis Phipps, riding him out. But he's very tough on top, and he finds ways to win. Luke Pletcher, people say, oh, Luke Pletcher, he doesn't blow people out. Yeah, but he gets his hand raised. So does Ali, so huge tournament for him. And you could feel it in the atmosphere there. He was having a good time wrestling. I'm curious to see how this translates over to this, rest of the season here.
What happened in his finals match?
He had the top guy in the nation. I mean, he had one of the toughest guys in the nation from Selma, California, Richard Figueroa, and he was in the match. He was in the match for sure. He lost 2-1. This is a guy who won the Super 32. Very, very highly ranked wrestler. I mean, you don't get much higher than number one in the nation, do you? So,
right.
For him to come out and do what he did and battle. I mean, he beat the number 2 seed Jacob Decatur in the semifinals. The quarterfinals, and he was a champion at Ironman last year. So Ali had just a great showing here.
What other WPIAL wrestlers made their way to the podium?
So Seneca Valley had some struggles with some of their guys, and wasn't able to get some of them on the podium. But Thane Lawrence did get on the podium. He had a tough go. I think he was expecting to finish higher than his 6th place finish. But again, it's Ironman. It's much harder to win the Ironman than it is to probably win a state title in some weights. So, Thane had some tough matches, but nonetheless, he finishes in 6th place.
He ended up having an injury default we saw there. What happened to him?
I think he's okay. I think he was just a little banged up. Nothing serious. But from what I saw and I heard, I think he's okay.
Any other WPIAL guys make it on to the stand?
No, and but it was still worth the trip. Trust me.
No doubt about it. A lot of great wrestling, I'm sure. So that's the 4 big tournaments we had a lot of WPIAL schools at. The one guy who made, I would say, probably the story of the weekend for us was Darren Miller of Kiski Area, and he's kind enough to join us now on the show. Darren, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You had a big weekend this past weekend, winning the Eastern Area Invitational, including a big win over Colton Camacho in the finals. Talk a little bit about your weekend and how you did, and are you happy with how things went?
Yeah, I'm very excited and very pleased with how the tournament went. Pinned and tech fought my way up to the finals and had a great match with Colton.
Talk a little about your semifinal match. Jared Kessler of Connellsville, a guy who, as a freshman, coming in with a lot of noise around him. Were you expecting to have a tough match with him?
I know he's a tough opponent, and I would never underestimate him. I just feel like I went in prepared and knew what I had to do.
And then talk about your finals match with Colton. Did you have a game plan going in, and were you able to stick with that, and it went exactly how you and Chris here talked about it?
Yeah, me and all of my coaches came up with the game plan going in. I felt like I stick to it pretty well. The only downfall of that match that I saw for me was when going into the second period, whenever he did a little elevator and put me on my hip for a reversal.
And Darren, I feel bad. You must feel like a celebrity. Yesterday, you're there at the media day, the kickoff show, and we were there sitting around. I could have just done the interview with you then last night too.
Yeah, that's all right. It's just a lot of people congratulating me. It's a little weird.
Yeah, well, it was a big win for you, and talking about that, and I think you kind of get maybe a little bit overlooked because of last year, not making a state tournament. The year before that, having such a good state tournament, but now here you are as a senior. You're committed to Bucknell. Talk about your mindset for this year, and really how you want to finish your career.
I feel like this year, some of the pressure is off since I'm already committed, and I'm able to go in, work hard, and go for my goal of being a state champion.
And you got pretty close there your sophomore year. What do you take away from that experience when you were able to come away with a third-place medal at the state tournament? And, what can you kind of do to gain off of that and grow from that experience?
Shows you can't overlook anyone at that tournament. There's not one single person that isn't good there, and you have to go into every match prepared. You can't be drained from cutting weight or anything of the such.
And speaking of cutting weight, I mean, you're up to the 132. How do you feel at that weight, and do you feel like that's a weight you could see yourself for the majority of the season?
I feel really good at this weight. I feel strong, not feeling cut down. Thinking about possibly 28 for near the end of the season, but I haven't made up my mind quite yet.
Well, Darren, talk about your team, Kiski, winning the WPIAL championship last year. I'm sure you guys have aspirations to repeat as well as do well at the state tournament. How's everything going team-wise? Are you guys feeling as strong as you did coming back from a year ago?
Yeah, I feel that we are very strong again this year, and I feel like we can have a three-peat WPIAL title for the first time ever at the Eastern Area tournament. We won by 60 points, and we were missing at least 2 starters.
Talk about your role as far as with the team, obviously being a senior leader. I'm sure a lot of guys are looking to you. What kind of advice have you been giving some of the younger guys, and what are you planning to do as you continue through the rest of the season to make sure the team's ready come February?
I feel like I can go by example and show them that they have to work hard in the room, and eventually that will show big results.
Well, Darren, we appreciate you taking some time out to join us. Congratulations on your Eastern Area Championship. Best of luck as you head through the season, and best luck to the Cavaliers as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks to Darren Miller of Kiski for joining us on the show. And boy, I'm excited to see the Kiski Area Cavaliers. Once they get everybody in their lineup, they're going to be strong, and they're going to be tough to beat again this year.
They're dangerous, man. They just continue to reload and just rebuild that team. It seems like, they lost a couple guys. Well, no, they return a lot, and they just continue to get better. And I'm very excited to see how they do not only the WPIAL, but the state level.
They lose the big one, right? Isaac Reed.
Sure.
That's like almost a guaranteed 6, I think, every time he stepped out on the mat, except for maybe a couple of matches that he had throughout the team part. But outside of that, they have the same guys coming back, and they're going to be strong, and it's going to be exciting to see. They get underway this coming week, and their first match is going to be at Norwin. So, Vince DeAugustine, welcome to Norwin. You get Kiski Area Cavaliers as your first match.
It was weird seeing Vince yesterday in his Norwin gear, but he seems so happy and comfortable where he's at. I think he's really excited to build tradition at Norwin. They get Kiski Area right off the bat. They were at the Hampton Dog Duels. They had a couple tough matches, North Allegheny, Thomas Jefferson. So they were able to scrap a little bit there. And
they beat North Allegheny.
They did.
Lost to Thomas Jefferson.
Correct.
But again, both close matches.
Sure. So I'm excited to see that match. There should be some good ones, good matchups there.
Penn Trafford, meanwhile, also going to get underway. They're hosting Franklin Regional. So a couple big ones here in subsection 1A.
Yeah, and again, should see some potential, WPIAL matches here that have implications for the postseason. Nick Coy, I'm excited to see him wrestling this season. Franklin Regional, though, they're solid throughout. So it's going to be a good one.
Outside of that, not a lot of big team matchups here in the first week of section wrestling, but Section 1, and especially 1A, I think is probably the toughest, where you're always going to see a good one at least once every week. But outside of that, not a lot of big ones coming up. But there is a big wrestling tournament coming up this weekend, and that's where PA Power will be King of the Mountain.
Yeah, King of the Mountain is probably one of my favorite tournaments, maybe behind Powerade and some others, but it's one of the best there is. And it's going to be fun this year because there's a lot of new talent. Teams like Forest Hills are coming in. Cumberland Valley's coming back. Mannheim Central's coming in. But the WPIAL teams that are going to be here are pretty stout. You got teams like Burrell. Burrell is going to be here. Burrell, by the way, we didn't mention, had a tough duel with Waynesburg.
Yeah.
That was a really good match. It came down to criteria. And Waynesburg was able to come away 34-33 in that match. But love that first early meeting between those two just powerhouses, right? But
similar wrestling styles.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Very, very similar in a certain sense. Burrow will be there at the King of the Mountain. In addition to them, they're going to be joined by Franklin Regional. So obviously guys like Carter Dybert, Mason Spears, Garrett Thompson. Zach McCann, those guys are going to be in there in contention. And then also you're going to have Penn Trafford, so Nick Coy, he'll be there battling it out with some of the state's top wrestlers. And then Seneca Valley. So, of course, what am I thinking? Carter Divert, Dylan Chappell. We could see this happen again for the third time in as many months, it seems like. So, it's very exciting to see how these guys shape up and stack up, because you got teams like Counts Rock South, Chestnut Ridge, Owen-J. Roberts, Sagertown, State College, Wyalusing. You got some Muncie. You got some stud teams here. So it's gonna be tough for the WPIAL to really do well here.
Well, it should be interesting nonetheless, and we always see some big stories coming out of this, and some of the freshmen too. We'll see if they end up making some noise. Other than that, some dual tournaments coming up this weekend, like the Moon Duels, where we have a lot of WPIAL schools featured there.
Yeah, Connellsville being one of them, Quaker Valley, South Fayette, USC, and Hempfield. Those teams it's much like the Hampton Dog Duels. It's nice to see these teams kind of going at it with teams that not necessarily going to see maybe in their subsection. So very good to see that. The Armstrong tournament as well is going on. You got Derry and Kiski Area. Derry's a little down this year, but they're not out.
And even the Penn Cambria Holiday Classic as well. That's got a feature a lot of WPIAL schools too. And then the North Hills Duels. That's usually where Kiski is, but they're not going to go there this year. So Pine Richland stepping in, wrestling there with North Hills, Penn Hills, and Gateway. Yeah,
it's interesting how these teams kind of shift around. But the North Hills Duels, it's nice to see Pine Richland get in there with North Hills, and Penn Cambria. Yeah, a lot of studs there. North Allegheny is going to be there, which they could have a few guys do well there. South Park as well, Mount Pleasant. I love Mount Pleasant's young talent that they have there. So it's wrestling season. We're in the thick of it. I'm actually going to Penn State, Arizona State on Friday. I'm going to King of Mountain, leaving there, going to Arizona State versus Penn State, then coming back to King of Mountain, and then it's crazy. So in other words, we need to be on the PA Power Twitter to make sure we're keeping up to date on everything going on. Well, you got to. Yeah, you have to. You have to be following us at this point. If not, what the heck are you doing? Not following PA Power Wrestling, I tell you that much. So, we got a lot in store for you. We got a lot of help coming in. So, we're going to keep you updated on everything. We had a big week this past week. You got the freshman report come out. We had the rankings come out, team and individual. A lot of stuff on PA Power. And this podcast as well. I mean, I did not sleep very much last week. And then you go right into Ironman. I was dragging a little bit, and then, but I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better, and the rankings are getting easier now that we have people at their weights and have some results under the belt. So, and then of course our college season's picking up as well. We got a lot of college things going on. Mickey Philippi, our college podcast just had Mickey Philippi on as a guest to talk about him. He beat Luke Pletcher. So, some guys that we used to talk about how many weeks, in a row here. So, two guys have wrestled each other a lot. About 4,087 times, I believe. Yeah, a ton of times. So, and they're still wrestling in college. They're still wrestling in college. So, yeah, it's good to see that. You can't stop following guys once they go to college, and it's fun to stay up to date on that. So, PA Power Wrestling has you covered from all angles. That's right. PAPowerWrestling.com. We're on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle. You can follow us along the way, and this journey is to the wrestling season. That's right, and we're excited to bring you there every step of the way. We want to thank Darren Miller for joining us on the podcast, and make sure you tune in next week. We'll recap the tournaments, recap the matches, and get you set for the following week's actions. I want to thank my partner, Jeff Upson. I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in to WarUp on the WPIAL.